Expert in dry wit and humor and purveyor of urban cool, Fran Lebowitz, the cultural satirist, will be appearing for one night only in Pittsburgh. This is happening at the Carnegie Music Hall on Friday, March 3rd at 7:30 p.m. The star of the Netflix series Pretend It's a City will be in conversation with moderator and writer Damon Young. After the talk, there will be a 30-minute Q&A as well as a book signing. If you don't bring your books, that's okay, because books will be available for sale at the event, courtesy of Penguin Bookshop. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. Pittsburgh is pretty, but all those gorgeous hills are a problem too. You know, this time of year, the temperatures, they're up, they're down, it rains all the time. And what follows, landslides, are probably going to get worse with climate change. Public Source reporter Quinn Glebicki is with me to talk about how much money this could cost us and what homeowners can and can't do about it. It's Wednesday, February 15th. I'm Morgan Moody, and this is CityCast Pittsburgh.
You know, we're not in the American West. We're not in a place that's going to experience, at the current moment, extreme droughts or, wildfires or anything like that. But we do have a history of flooding and landslides. And in the context of the climate crisis conversation, that's something that's really going to become more and more problematic and worse the further we progress.
Why are we so landslide prone?
That's interesting. So I talked to a geologist, and she basically explained it to me. You know, to understand that, you really have to go back millions of years, right? So rewinding to the prehistoric age, right? This area used to be really flat. It used to be full of rivers and streams, but it was very flat. And those rivers and streams would come in from the eastern part of the state, and it would carry these clay-rich soils and sediments that would get deposited here. And then at the beginning of the first ice age, glacial flows blocked the ancestral Ohio River, which used to flow north into the Great Lakes. When that happened, those rivers and streams eroded, the steep gullies and hillsides and banks of rivers that you have come to characterize Pittsburgh today. And those are all built up of those clay-rich soils, which are really notoriously unstable when wet. They call them the Pittsburgh red beds.
So this is something that started in the ice ages. So this isn't new, I guess, really for our area. So why are people attributing the landslides that we could be seeing and the landslides that we have seen, I guess, over the past few years to climate change?
Mm-hmm. So the climate conversation fits in, right? We're going to be getting more extreme weather patterns, just fundamentally. And among those, we're going to have a lot of extreme rainfall events. Looking back to 2018, that was the year when we had a turning point in that conversation. We had over 200 landslides in Allegheny and the surrounding counties. And really, that was the wettest year on record in Pennsylvania. So
I remember when some of these landslides happened, especially that one on 28. It was all over the news.
Local roads and homes in danger. Days of rain have softened the hillsides, creating the potential for another round of devastating slides.
People living in Squirrel Hill were evacuated last night because of a landslide in their neighborhood.
A section of Route 30 dropped nearly 40 feet, causing the collapse of a retaining wall.
Today's rain brought down a fresh pile on the railroad tracks behind Station Square. PennDOT is continuing to watch quite a few areas that are vulnerable.
We know that Western Pennsylvania, and in particular parts of the city of Pittsburgh, are some of the most prone areas to landslides. We can't stop them.
So we know we are prone to landslides, but how is climate change involved?
When we talk about it from a climate perspective, it's really the rain that's going to be causing that, and those are going to be really increasing in magnitude, frequency, and intensity. And really the foundation of it is, when those soils become saturated, they tend to slide. And we've already talked about how, these steep gullies and hills are unstable, and that's really just going to exacerbate the problem.
For listeners who are newer to the area or don't know much about landslides, how bad can they be here?
I mean, it depends, right? Like, a landslide could be cracks in the road that, see one side of the road falling off the side of a hill, right? Like that's something that we see pretty frequently here. But I've also talked to people who've had their whole backyard slide down a hill. That person was fortunate that it didn't take their house with it. But that's something that happens as well. In 2018, there were a tremendous loss of property that year. And these are things that can be a really big financial burden for people. Landslides can cost up to $1 million to fix. And
does insurance cover it?
No, that was one of the things that I was kind of surprised to learn about. Homeowners insurance pretty much across the board does not cover land movement. So basically, at the moment, if you have a landslide on your property and that takes its toll from a damage perspective, you don't have really any recourse but to pay out of pocket or to move and abandon that property.
How are people trying to address this problem with insurance, if you know?
So there's been both a local and national movement to come up with some sort of landslide insurance program. Most recently here, there have been a bipartisan effort on the part of two state officials to bring a landslide insurance program, and that would actually be from an existing state program and wouldn't necessarily add another program to the state books. It would be more of an amendment to a current program. So they're hoping that will expedite its prospects for passage.
I remember when sinkholes were the primary concern. Before things get too bad and before you're out $1 million to pay for any damages done by a landslide, is there anything that people can do, I guess, that can predict that this could happen on your property?
I think once you already have a property, it's important to know what your risk is. I know there are a certain number of groups, including the city planning department, that are working on mapping landslide risk across the city. But as far as private property, there are certain things that you can do to address the ecological health. Things like planting trees on slopes, dealing with invasive vine overgrowth, things that would deteriorate the health of the ecology on your property. Having a healthy ecology can really help to mitigate the risk that you have for landslides.
What is the predicted expense in the future for cleanup?
I mean, it's fluctuating, right? I mean, it all depends on that frequency and intensity of rainfall and how the land moves. But climate scientists caution that years like 2018, when the city had to spend $12 million just on cleanup, that could become much more of a normal occurrence moving forward.
Quinn Glowicki is a climate and environment reporter for Public Source. Quinn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
A little more news before you go. Pittsburgh's Cindy Chung made history as the first Asian Pacific American judge to sit on the Third Circuit of Appeals. She served as U.S. Attorney for Western Pennsylvania since the end of 2021, and before that, she was a civil rights trial attorney at the Justice Department. And a local pre-apprentice program has been certified by the state. It's called Breaking the Chains of Poverty, and it's run by APRI to help build career and trade skills. The state says it's officially the city's first Black-owned program of its kind, and officials gave them $400,000 to help people in Pittsburgh. Fun fact, the APRI is named after African-American labor union organizer and civil rights activist A. Philip Randolph, who organized the first successful Black-led labor union in 1925. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Special thanks to KDKA for the clips we used in today's show. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, rate the show, and of course, subscribe to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city, so we'll see you then. Cindy served.